All right, we're here at my VermiHut indoor worm bin, and we are going to do something that we haven't done for 2.5 years. We are going to go inside here and replace the Coco Coir mat. First, I'm going to get some of these worms right off the edge, and then I'm going to put a piece of newspaper down. So let's go ahead and take a look. Now the lid is not just a flat lid. It has some depth to it. And between the depth of the lid and this translucent plastic is a Coco Coir mat. So it has these tabs, and what I'm going to do is just take this translucent part off. So you can see after 2.5 years, this mat was probably about maybe 3/4 of an inch thick, and they have eaten it all down. Now the purpose of this lid and all this depth that you kind of see here is to get some air into the bin, but also prevent it from getting any kind of critters or flies. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of push this off to the side, and we're going to put all this into this top tray and use it as feeding. So all the worms that you see here and all these castings and this kind of thing are all going to go back in there. Now, I will tell you, the first few months, every time I fed, I would come up here and see if there were any worms and kind of pull them out of the mat, until I realized the worms just like to explore. So they are going to go up inside your lid and they're going to do their thing. But I haven't even looked in here for probably, I don't know, like 1.5 years, and everything worked out just fine. So nothing to worry about if you see worms get into your lid. Now, I think you can see right here, there's some holes, and they're everywhere. The worms will occasionally stick their heads out, and as soon as they put their heads out, they realize it's dry and they pull them right back in. So you're not going to get any escapees from this VermiHut lid or from the VermiHut worm tower. So let me go ahead and clean all this out. I'm going to put it into the tray below, and then we'll come back and we're going to put a new Coco Coir liner. So real quick, I want you to be able to see the top here real quick before I put all the stuff that was inside of this lid in here. Now remember, over here we put all the remnants from the pre-harvest tray, or the tray that we harvested down here, and then we put some more shredded cardboard right there. So in goes all this tray material and all the worms that are in here, and then I'm going to go out back and I'm going to rinse this off into my garden. All right, so we're back. And we are ready to put some new Coco Coir in here. And instead of buying from the VermiHut company, I just went to my local hardware store, and they have Coco Coir mats, and I think this was actually to go into a plant potter, and I cut it up, and I'm just going to kind of jam it in here. And again, I don't even think this was required, because I think you could just put that other piece of plastic on here, and there'd be a little air gap, and there'd be no problems there at all. But I think the Coco Coir just kind of is another layer of protection against flying insects, that kind of thing. And I've never seen them in here. Now, using the pieces that I cut out, I'm just going to kind of jam them in the corners here. And then next, I want to show you this. This has a little bit of a notch right here. I don't know if you can see that. And so, you know, which side do I put up or down or whatever? And what I've kind of decided on is this little part right here. I'm going to put that down just to kind of put a little bit of air between this Coco Coir mat and this. And let's go ahead and just jam it in where the tabs go, right there. Again, easier to explain than to do, but luckily I'm not going to be in here until maybe another 2.5 years. So there you go. We got the lid back in shape, and it's really dry in there, but the humidity is going to get it wet, and the worms are going to find their way up in there again. But we are all set. So now let's get back to our regularly scheduled feeding. All right, so like I said, last time we were in here, we did a big rotation and we gave them their first feeding. So this is the first feeding that we put into the new top feeding tray, and that is to get them to come up from all the other trays. And sure enough, we've got a lot of little red wigglers and blue worms here. And we've also got some of our shredded cardboard that we had in here. And we put in some banana peels, lettuce stalk, we put in some strawberries and tangerine peels and carrot tops, along with some broccoli stems. And I actually smell a little bit of the tangerine citrusy smell right there. And these, I think, are avocado pits, or not pits, but rather the shells themselves. And sure enough, the worms like to hide in there. And we've got a couple of stragglers. And oh yeah, here we go. Here's that pumpkin stem again. Let me go ahead and aerate the rest of this, and we'll come back and we will set up for our feeding. Right there, you can see a lot of little ones. So they've come up here. They're probably breeding and they are making their home up here. I would say probably 80% of the worms are going to be in your top feeding tray as compared to any of the trays that you have below. Now in this section right here, we put some of our old stuff that didn't quite get composted, like this mango seed, which will probably last through about 4 trays. I think we had, yep, there we go. We've got a corn cob, which I'm kind of afraid to break open, well, because it might have a worm in it, and sure enough it did, but it got really crumbly there for me. Yep, another corn stalk. Let's see, yep. Oh, there we go. If you want to know what's inside a corn, it's worms. No, I'm just kidding. Only if you put them in your worm bin. Here's where a lot of them are. In the corner, so not necessarily where the feeding zone was, because they ate it all, and then they're searching for other stuff. So we need to give them a really big feeding. So I'm really liking this. For only being 11 days old and coming from down below where they were the inoculating trays, the volume is still really high, and it's going to go down as they eat all these little pieces of cardboard shreds. But we're going to put in a bunch more cardboard for them. So in we go with some dry cardboard, and the food is going to get it wet. And these VermiHuts really retain the moisture really well through all the castings and bedding, but they drain any excess, and for me it drains into dry inoculating bed. So I'm really not too worried about putting dry stuff in because I know it's going to get moist, but the bin will never get over moist. All right, so I said big feeding and I meant it. So we're going to put in some avocado peels and then we'll just dump this out. All of this stuff we just collect throughout the week and I put it in that little bin and then we leave it in our freezer. So we've got some banana peels right here. Lots of them actually. And I attempt to take it out early and let it thaw, but when it's in a clump this big, it kind of resists that a little bit. We've got tomatoes, we've got some more citrus, which you can put in your bin in moderation. Again, this is moderation. Maybe if you have 50 worms, or I'm sorry, 500 worms, you know, maybe something smaller than this. But for me, I probably have somewhere around 5,000 in here, so I'm not too worried about the amount that I've put in here. Now, these banana peels may take a little bit longer, but I was surprised at how many they ate the last time. I think this is some broccoli, and then we've got some maybe celery stalks, and then some carrot tops from the carrots in my garden, which are just growing like crazy. I love it. I'm here in Tampa, Florida, so our gardens are looking really good right now. And I think I'm going to give them a little bit more color here. So we've got some mushrooms, and looks like a pear, and I think those go a little bit faster than apples. This is a little piece of an onion, and then we've got some carrots. So a really big feeding. This is pretty high. I probably need to kind of push it down a little bit, and then we're going to put our amendments on.
Jeez, it's a lot.
First thing they're going to get is some of my homemade worm chow, which is just expired grains from my pantry, like oats and cornstarch and flour, that kind of thing. Just put it in my magic bullet blender and blend it up. And then my worms like coffee, just like me. They don't even know it's coffee, but it's used coffee grounds, spent coffee grounds that they use as a food source. So I just like to put it in here rather than putting it in my trash. And then finally, we'll put in some pulverized eggshells, which is grit for their gizzards that they use to break up their food. In all of this, I keep the end in mind, and the end in mind is my garden. So all of this stuff is just going to be great for my garden. And it's going to be even better because it's going to come out in the form of worm poop. So I always like to put a lot of carbon with all the nitrogen. So carbon being the shredded cardboard and nitrogen being all the food scraps that you see here. And then we're just going to bury it up, and I got to make sure that's going to be low enough for the lid. And in the VermiHut, I guess burying the food isn't all that important, but it's a great habit for all your other worm bins because this lid really helps to seal things in, and not an airtight seal as you saw with all those holes in the sides, and then with that Coco Coir mat helping to kind of create even more air holes. So the bin is really breathable. I don't even typically lift the lid in between feedings, and it's been 11 days. So they're getting plenty of air, as you can see. So I think that will about do it. I hope you're having a great day. I hope your worm bins are doing good. And while your worm bins are doing good, I'll put this newspaper back on. So happy vermicomposting, everybody. Take care now. Yay, my shiny new lid.